diabetes and hypertension. The World Health Organization estimates that 3 in 10 persons are living with hypertension worldwide. According to a report that was published last year, over 500,000 adults are living with diabetes in Kenya, this risking their lives further. With this, the Ministry of Health, in conjunction with county governments, has directed that clinics dealing with non-communicable diseases like hypertension, among others, remain operational. However, people with diabetes and hypertension are advised to stick to healthier diets, especially during this COVID-19 period, as this will help their body fight the killer virus that is if they contract the disease. Acting Health Director General Dr. Patrick Omondi has said stigma is becoming a problem, especially with the containment measures that are leading to anxiety and depression among Kenyans. Mark Kimunda for Hope TV, Nairobi.
Now, as the country continues to record more recoveries from COVID-19 disease, stigmatization is still a challenge in the fight against coronavirus in the country. A survey by TIFA has revealed that 23% of Kenyans are not willing and cannot visit people who've recovered from the virus. It also indicates that 41% of parents do not allow their children to play with other children, especially of those who've recovered. By Thursday, 2,109 people had been discharged from hospitals across the country after recovering from the virus. The report further showed that another 23% of Kenyans fear taking coronavirus tests due to discomfort during the process of testing. Our reporter Joseph Maingi analyzed the data from TIFA.
92% of Kenyans do not know anyone who have tested positive for coronavirus. In the report released by Trend and Insight for Africa TIFA on Thursday, it reveals that half of the respondents feel that the worst is yet to happen in the country as far as COVID-19 is concerned. Since when the first case of COVID-19 was reported in Kenya, stigmatization has rampantly spread across the country towards persons who have recovered from the disease and those being released from the quarantine centers. According to TIFA, the stigma is worse for families whose relatives have died as a result of the coronavirus. Despite the high number of Kenyans not knowing any relative, friend or neighbor who has contracted the virus, 65% represent a very worried lot of Kenyans, while 16% are not bothered at all. With the male gender attributing for the biggest stake of the number of COVID-19 cases in the country. Interestingly, 18% of male gender are not worried at all if they can contract the virus, where their female compatriots, represented by 14%, are not worried at all. Residents living in the central region of Kenya represent the bigger function of Kenyans who are worried about getting infected with coronavirus at 72%. The region is followed closely by Eastern at 69%, Northeastern at 68%, Nyanza at 67%, while Rift Valley and Western region stand at 65%, with the coastal region and Nairobi having tested the biggest number of COVID-19 cases are represented by 64% and 52% respectively. So far, 41 out of the 47 counties in Kenya have recorded positive cases of COVID-19. Yesterday, the country recorded the highest tally ever at 307 positive cases, with Nairobi having the biggest share at 154 cases. Despite the stigmatization that has come with the virus, at least 79% of Kenyans would like to be tested from the virus if the service was offered for free in their neighborhood. 39% of Kenyans who are likely to be tested believe that the test is more painful, while 20% of them are likely not to believe the same. On isolation, 69% of Kenyans would like to isolate themselves if found positive of COVID-19. However, 65% of them would not be providing the contact information to aid in contact tracing, and 74% would not inform their friends or relatives if they tested positive. According to the data, 13% of Kenyans still believe that once you get coronavirus, you cannot recover forever, while 28% of Kenyans fear that once you test for COVID-19, you are likely to die. As the number of COVID-19 cases continue to surge, Kenyans can only remain hopeful that the end is approaching. For Hope TV News Watch, I'm Joseph Maingi.
Moving on, the Interfaith Council has met with the Council of Governors as the Secretariat continues to deliberate on the appropriate guidelines to guide reopening of churches and other places of worship. Led by its chairperson, Catholic Archbishop Anthony Muheria, the Council held a closed-door meeting with the COG and deliberated on the measures that will be tabled before the President by the end of this week, ahead of President Uhuru Kenyatta's update on the restrictions. Alice Dana reports.
The probability of opening up churches is very high and is in the hands of God. This is according to the Interfaith Council Secretariat, which met the Council of Governors on Thursday at Ufungamano House in Nairobi.
Please, let's have it out.
The Council Secretariat, which was constituted to develop protocols for resumption of public worship, says it is incorporating ideas that are good and workable, following drafts of proposals from various stakeholders who are keen to see the places of worship reopened soon.
We have interacted with many people. We have interacted with many religious leaders and continue to receive many suggestions which we wish to incorporate so that the whole entire country and all people we know in our country believe in God can be as best prepared as we can at the time when we'll be having the places of our public worship once more reopening.
Led by the chairperson, Archbishop Tonny Muheria, the council says the protocols on the reopening of places of worship will be announced as soon as they are fully developed.
We are concluding this week and we hope that that document will be ready for submission to the authority that appointed us. And then we will certainly have to continue discussing to see what next step. So we do believe that by come to the end of this week, we should have a good draft document.
The Interfaith Council has also urged Kenyans to continue being patient, saying they are coming towards the end of their work, and expressed hope that there will be a worthwhile interim report and draft guidelines in the reopening of religious places. They emphasized the great need of compliance with the Ministry of Health guidelines in combating the spread of COVID-19.
We are passing and checking and incorporating those ideas that are good and workable into the workings of our Interfaith Council, and to ask still all of our Kenyans to continue being patient, that we are coming towards the end of our work.
The Council of Governors, through its Chief Whip, Makueni Governor Professor Kivutha Kibwana, asked the Council to prioritize in its report the recommendation of facilitating crucial items such as thermogans to churches that are not able to purchase them. He further challenged religious institutions to assist in terms of mobilizing quarantine centers in their facilities.
Question of thermogans, so that places of worship which are not able to afford those ones are helped through the COG, are helped through the national government. And I think that's a matter which, if it ends up in your report, I think that's a matter to take into account, because for some of the places of worship, especially the grassroots and in our informal settlements, they may not be able to afford that easily.
The committee is expected to submit its report to President Uhuru Kenyatta before his July 6th address, in which he is expected to issue new directives or review existing ones. Places of worship in the country have been closed since March after the COVID-19 pandemic hit the country. Many churches have resorted to online services, while some air their sermons on selected TV stations. For Hope TV News Watch in Nairobi, I'm Alice Diana.
In other news now, President Uhuru Kenyatta has warned against political interference in the forthcoming national rollout of the Tonny Youth Employment Program. The president said the initiative was mooted to assist Kenyan youth whose livelihoods had been disrupted by the COVID-19 health crisis. The national rollout of the Youth Employment Initiative is set to begin on Monday next week. This is after the pilot phase of the intervention, which was conducted in 8 counties, had been a major success. Uhuru has called on regional and county commissioners to take control of the program, noting that similar interventions were in the past mismanaged.
Let us help these people. Like I'm saying, what we have seen by properly utilizing these monies, we have seen even a reduction in crime because people are positively engaged. This is what we would like to hear in all our sub-counties. That because vijana wale ambao wanatusumbua wako engaged, there's less crime. Because this 10 billion shillings is being used in the best possible manner. This is a process of ensuring that we assist the most vulnerable in our society during this particular period. And those must be the people. And I will follow very closely because this is something that is very close to me, it's very dear to me. As I've said, I've seen its impact on the lives of young people, especially here in Nairobi. And that is the same that I expect to see across the country, the impact being felt by those young people.
Meanwhile, President Uhuru has continued to meet leaders from the Western Kenya region for development agenda, days after a section of leaders from the region accused him of sidelining the region in terms of development. Just days after Interior Cabinet Secretary Dr. Fred Matiang'i held a meeting with a section of Luhya leaders, President Kenyatta held another meeting with them, affirming his government's support, especially in the revival of the sugar industry, even as the country continues to battle COVID-19. Dickens Luvanda has the report.
A section of leaders from the populous Western Kenya region have continued to chart the development path by supporting President Uhuru Kenyatta's development agenda as he looks forward to a positive legacy when he leaves office come 2022. President Kenyatta's main agenda in the latest meeting with the leaders, who were led by Devolution Cabinet Secretary Eugene Wamalwa, Council of Governors Chairman Kakamega Governor Wycliffe Oparanya, and Kotu boss Francis Atuli, gave focus on reviving the sugar sector, which has been ailing for years now, ever since the collapse of the giant sugar miller, Mumias Sugar Factory. There have been cries from sugar farmers in the region over government's plan to privatize its stake in the sugar industry without involving them, not forgetting cheap illegal sugar imports from Somalia, Tanzania, Uganda and South Sudan, which have continued to harm the sector. A sugar industry stakeholders report recently released by a task force appointed by President Kenyatta recommended the barring of local millers from importing sugar from common market for Eastern and Southern Africa COMESA, with emphasis on reviving Mumias and Nzoia sugar factories. The Sugar Sector Revival Report, generated by a presidential task force co-chaired by Agriculture CS Peter Munya and Governor Oparanya, outlined several interventions, including writing off of debts owed by the millers. The government, through the Ministry of Agriculture, has already published the sugar sector regulations and is in the process of strengthening the legal framework to anchor sector reforms as part of reviving the sector. Other leaders present during the Harambee House meeting include Busia Governor's Hospital Jamong, his Bungoma counterpart Wycliffe Wangamati, Wilberforce Otechile of Vihiga, and Patrick Haemba of Trans Nzoia County. Dickens Luvanda, Hope TV Newswatch.
Thank you, Dickens, for that report. Let's now take a short commercial break on Newswatch. We still have much more lined up for you. Don't go too far.
Top imerudi tena na ina ladha tamu wa kuchangamsha wa ladha ya machungwa, tropical, apple, maembe na strawberry banana. Kaa salama na ufurahie ladha ya kipekee ya Top na familia yako. Top, you can't beat this taste.
That is the sound of a cool breeze. The sign of a new day. The sun is rising beautifully from the far east. The sky is getting bright and the birds are singing beautifully. It is a new day at Victory Gardens Kitengela by Optivan. Be part of this community. Victory Gardens is only 10 minutes drive from Kitengela town. Invest in value. Call us today on 0702 8310 83 or visit www.optivan.co.ke. Optivan, celebrating 20 years of serving you. Experience the difference.
Tunakuletea burudani safi kutoka wanamuziki wa nyimbo za sifa na ibada, mahojiano ya moja kwa moja, na mafunzo ya hali ya juu.
Dhamira ya mtu ikifa anaweza fanya anything. Because kile kinanitofautisha na mbuzi ni dhamira.
There was this time niliambia Mungu, mimi samahani Mungu, lakini naona umenifanya mimi kuwa daraja. Sitaki.
Ni mahali pa uchipuzi na ulezi wa vipaji.
Mwimbaji anaweza itisha akitaka, lakini unajua hiyo ni sauti hajanunua. Hujanunua, hiyo ni umebarikiwa nayo. So hiyo unaweza mupeane aidha bure ama. Lakini hii pande nyingine sisi tupe invest, ni investment ona.
Tunabeba mwili, lakini mimi sikujua hii ni maagano nafanya.
Ungana naye Mwalimu Shaban Brima kila Ijumaa saa 2 jioni na marudio kila Jumamosi saa 10 jioni.
Machozi ya furaha nishangaze baba, mashuhuda wangu watambua wewe ni Mungu.
Welcome back to the broadcast. You're watching Hope TV News Watch. Now, Deputy President William Ruto has pledged his support to small businesses and young people in the country in efforts to better the lives of Kenyans. Speaking at his current home in Nairobi, the DP urged young people to shun tribal boundaries and enhance cohesion to better the country. Ruto welcomed youths and women groups to his court, donated shoe shining stands, laundry machines, tailoring machines, car washing machines, motorcycles and animal feeds to the various groups to support and enhance their incomes.
None of us is expecting to be given anything. Nobody is waiting for anything on a silver platter. Everybody wakes up early, works long hours, sleeps late, because their hustle must put food on their table. And that is what we want to support. That is what will make a difference in Kenya. It is not the big versus the small. It is not the rich versus the poor. It is everybody's hustle counts, irrespective of the size. Yule mtu ambaye anauza kiosk, na yule ambaye anauza mboga sokoni, na yule anaendesha car wash, na yule ambaye anaendesha saloon ama catering kama Julia hapa na kundi ya Ana, hawa pia hiyo ni biashara yao.
Pursue ile dream uko nayo, rana hiyo dream yako. Na mimi ninawaambia hivi, kila mmoja wetu hapa akipewa time atawaambia ana story. His Excellency, kila mtu anajua story yake. Alikuwa anauza kuku, na labda ile siku alikuwa anauza kuku, watu wakimcheki wako wanafikiria kuna kitu inaweza result poa kutoka kwa huyo muuzaji wa kuku. Sasa tunaongea yeye ndio deputy president wetu. Tukiangalia Bena pia yeye ana story yake. Mureithi ana story yake. Mheshimiwa Roro ana story yake. Kila mtu kwa life ana story. But kitu ya maana kabisa mimi nataka tu ku encourage niwaambie, usi lose focus. Usi lose goal yako na purpose yako kwa life.
And Wiper Party leader Kalonzo Musyoka has cautioned Kenyans against traveling to rural areas if COVID-19 restrictions are lifted by President Uhuru Kenyatta. Kalonzo spoke while giving a COVID-19 donation, said unnecessary movements to the rural areas would have serious consequences given that expert opinions have shown that many Kenyans might be asymptomatic. Kalonzo says the pushing of the possible reopening of schools from September to January is a clear signal that the country has a long way to go in combating the pandemic. He wants Kenyans to exercise utmost caution to ensure the disease does not get out of control.
Those of you who live in the city are waiting for the day, and maybe in the next few days, when President Uhuru Kenyatta will announce lifting of the lockdown or restrictions, removing the restrictions, so that people can run home. Now, just imagine what this actually means, and I think that's why he discussed with the Council of Governors, so that they can all go prepare each county to have at least 300 minimum
300 beds because of what he anticipated. And we have heard it from Roy that they have no food here, and there's somebody with a kaduka somewhere in Kabati, in Kitui, and you run there. And what that means is, you don't know how this thing is. It could very well be that you are asymptomatic. You're carrying the virus and you don't know. Now, I want you to know, fellow Kenyans, that our elderly people live in the villages. So there's a real threat that you are now going to transmit this virus to the aged Kenyans who are in the villages and who are actually very far from some of these hospitals. So we must be prepared, because again, we cannot continue under lockdown forever because of the job losses. We have had it all and what has been happening. But the consequences will obviously be tremendous. All of us want to open and go back there and get on with it. But I think precious life is more important than everything else. We cannot pick ourselves up and pick up the pieces and try to make do the best way one can.
A police constable, Roger Souma, from Lamu Police Station in Lamu County, has been found guilty of raping a woman who had gone to launch a complaint at the station. The 28-year-old is said to have committed the offense in his house at Lamu Police Lines in Langoni on December 8, 2019. Lamu Principal Magistrate Alan Tembe also found the officer guilty of abuse of his position of authority as a police officer after the prosecution led by Eddie Kadebe proved to court how Rogers lured the woman to his house at Langoni Police Lines. The officer will be sentenced tomorrow, Friday, July 3rd, 2020. And a non-governmental organization in Nairobi has stepped in to empower women and girls considering rising cases of gender violence and sexual assault orchestrated by the COVID-19 pandemic. Action Aid, in conjunction with Unilever and UK Aid, has flagged off a huge consignment of soap and surface cleaning detergents to informal areas of Nairobi, Isiolo, Migori, Kakamega, Mombasa, Embu and Kilifi counties. Grace Ongui has more.
The government has for several times called on NGOs and corporates to come in and offer a helping hand towards plans to cushion the vulnerable people who have been adversely affected by the ongoing pandemic. Access to information remains a major hindrance towards enlightening the masses on ways of reducing the rate of infection. Action Aid has put effort in ensuring that access to information is made possible even to the most marginalized areas by working in partnership with the media as well as other stakeholders to ensure this is achieved.
We work with the people whom we consider are marginalized. And so in a normal context, if you're marginalized, then given a situation, a humanitarian situation like COVID, the marginalization increases. Hence, the need to ensure that we use all means to pass the right information at the right time to the right people.
We seek to ensure that the communities that are worst affected are able to access communication. They are able to access information that helps them to demystify myths that are associated with any given humanitarian or emergency crisis they are facing, and also to localize the issues for them to interact and be aware of what it is that the obligations that are meted on them for them to be able to help cushion themselves, absorb the shocks with resilience without necessarily being thrown into further servitude.
Reports globally have indicated that from the onset of the pandemic, there has been a rise of cases of gender and sexual violence. Women and girls seem to be on the receiving end, and about 4,000 teenage girls in the recent weeks were reportedly impregnated in Machakos County since schools were closed. If the numbers are true, this exposes the magnitude of the worrying situation. The hygiene kits that will be distributed by Action Aid will target women and girls who, according to Action Aid Executive Director Susan Otieno, are the backbone of families and societies.
Right now, the numbers are increasing of girls who are getting pregnant while at home. Numbers are increasing of defilement cases. Where does this leave us when we are addressing COVID? And what we are saying is that what they can access in their environment should be made possible, should be made available. Hence, these hygiene kits will specifically reach majority of the women and the girls that we work with.
Thanking the UK government and Unilever for stepping in, Action Aid is calling on the government to ensure accountability in the distribution of detergents, as they will be working with county governments to ensure they are able to reach all who are in need in the 7 counties.
And this is also a call to action to fellow Kenyans that yes, we've been able to do this today with the UK government supporting us, with Unilever coming on board. What can you do in your space as an individual? And Action Aid provides you that opportunity as an individual. However small your contribution is, we are ready to receive it and channel it to the right population, the right people who need it for to improve their lives.
Grace Angoi for TV News Watch.
The U.S. government has donated personal protective and hospital equipment valued at 7.9 million shillings to 5 hospitals in Nairobi, Mombasa, Kisumu, Siaya and Nakuru counties in response to the COVID-19 pandemic. According to U.S. Ambassador to Kenya, Kyle Makata, each hospital will receive N95 masks, surgical masks, coveralls, medical goggles, face shields and pulse oximeters. This equipment, critical to patient care and protection of frontline healthcare workers, is funded by U.S. Africa Command, Overseas Humanitarian, Disaster and Civic Aid. The U.S. envoy was speaking when he presented PPE donations to Kenyatta National Hospital CEO, Dr. Evanson Kamuri, who said the facility is now focusing on establishing centers of excellence in a bid to streamline the health sector in the country.
The United States truly cares about Kenya, and so much that we are not going to make Kenya dependent upon us or anyone else. We will help, but we want to be side by side with the future leaders of this country, mentoring them to provide health care for their country.
Even for this gesture of taking the care of the health workers, this is very important, and part of the war will be won if we first win the safety of the health caregivers. And even after this, we will have many areas of partnering.
And with our story, News Watch takes another break. We'll be back shortly with business news.
Whether you are fat or thin, and for me, I don't consider myself fat. I consider myself good for my purpose, to hug women. When they come crying, and they come and hug me, they just come and I hug them and they cry and cry and cry until they are comfortable.
We praise together, we praise Him.
Welcome back to the broadcast. Now, a new market report by Scanad has shown that consumers are shrinking wallets has sparked drastic shifts in spending, purchasing habits and routines as they try to cope with the harsh economic effects of COVID-19. Dubbed Understanding the New Normal Consumer, the report aims to help brands understand the massive changes in the consumer environment as they try to adjust to a new way of living. The findings show that 84% of consumers are glaring at the reality of financial uncertainty as their household impact has been impacted negatively. 40% are financially vulnerable, while less than 30% are hopeful of a financial rebound in 3 months, with the rest looking at 6 to 12 months. Further, the report shows that a decline in economic activity in the country's main hubs has put immense financial pressure on Kenyan households and businesses. This has led to over half the employed populations receiving a salary cut, an estimated 435,000 Kenyans losing their jobs, with up to 47% of them relying on food donations to survive. Now, in efforts to revive the tourism industry and encourage local tourism, Tourism Cabinet Secretary Najib Balala says the government has reduced entry fees to all Kenya Wildlife Service (KWS) game parks and reserves by up to 50%. Balala said this will apply to all categories of tourists effective July 1st, 2020 and will run for 1 year. At the same time, KWS has given a 1-year moratorium to lodge owners in its parks and reserves for rent payments starting July 1st, 2020 to June 30th, 2021. Balala made the announcement at KWS headquarters, attributing the drastic reduction in fees to the current economic crisis arising from the COVID-19 pandemic. He's also called on owners of the lodges to use savings from the moratorium to improve on visitors' experience and grow their businesses, as well as promote KWS parks as preferred destinations for safari tourism. It's also called on Kenyans to take advantage of the affordable park entry fees to sample the beauty of Kenya's flora and fauna.
Due to the COVID-19 pandemic and the crisis and the economic meltdown, particularly in the tourism sector, we want to announce a 50% discount of all park entry fees into Kenya Wildlife Service marine parks and reserves. We appreciate that tourism is not going to bounce back immediately. So we have given a moratorium for 1 year, rent-free, from 1st of July to 30th.
Ministry has noted with great concern.
Due to the COVID-19 pandemic and the crisis and the economic meltdown, particularly in the tourism sector, we want to announce a 50% discount of all park entry fees into Kenya Wildlife Service marine parks and reserves. We appreciate that tourism is not going to bounce back immediately. So we have given a moratorium for 1 year, rent-free, from 1st of July to 30th of June 2021. This does not mean that we are not going to work with the partners. We appeal to these lodges to now take that money and invest in refurbishment. We appeal to those lodges to work with Kenya Wildlife Service to now start promoting Kenya Wildlife Service parks, but also Kenya as a safari destination. We also want to encourage Kenyans to enter into the park. We will be the first tourist to support our economy and our businesses in the tourism sector.
Shareholders of Jamii Bora Bank have unanimously approved Cooperative Bank's offer to acquire 90% stake. This is pursuant to an extraordinary general meeting of Jamii Bora Bank held on 1st July 2020. Coop Bank noted that the acquisition will be through the subscriptions of 224.2 billion new class of ordinary shares that will enable Coop Bank inject 1 billion shillings and appoint a board to run the business. What follows next will now be the regulatory approvals, notably from Central Bank of Kenya, Capital Markets Authority and the Competition Authority of Kenya. In a statement, Coop Bank MD Dr. Gideon Muriuki said the strategic entry of Coop Bank, coming in as a 90% strategic owner, is an inclusive growth model that particularly safeguards the existing shareholders of Jamii Bora in that they will now share in the expected future transformation gains and profitability growth. Agriculture Cabinet Secretary Peter Munya says the country may soon be faced with a sugar glut occasioned by increased importation and eventual collapse of the industry. Speaking on importation of raw cane and processed sugar, CS Munya suspended with immediate effect the importation of all brown sugar into the country. Munya also suspended pre-shipment approvals and extensions of all sugar import permits until further notice. The CS said uncoordinated importation of raw cane and brown sugar has rendered Kenyans and mills uncompetitive. He mentioned an influx of illegal importation of brown sugar from Uganda through the Busia border, with indications of unscrupulous businessmen and traders taking advantage of COVID-19 curfew hours to sneak unlawful imports into the country at night.
Ministry has noted with great concern an influx of illegal importation of brown sugar from neighboring country through the Busia border, indications of unscrupulous businessmen and traders taking advantage of the COVID-19 curfew hours to sneak in imports into the country at night. Additionally, some millers obtained temporary permits to import raw cane from a neighboring country for a limited period of 3 months. This trend could potentially affect the livelihoods of Kenyan farmers along the sugar belt, whose crop is now ready for harvest. Government has taken deliberate efforts to revive the sugar industry to make Kenya competitive in the sugar value chain. We believe that the country can achieve self-sufficiency in sugar and even have a surplus for export in the global market competitive.
Well, that story there wraps it up for us here on Newswatch. Many thanks for keeping us company. I'll see you again tomorrow, same time. My name is Tonny Omondi and our sign language interpreter has been Boniface Murithi. Have a good night and God bless.